Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine discovering that you are actively leaving like half of your total possible revenue on the table.
Right. Which is terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. And not because of a bad product, and not because of like a sudden shift in the economy either.
Oh, sure.
But because of a fundamental blind spot in the actual architecture of how your business operates.
Yeah, the literal machinery of it.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, we tend to assume that the brands dominating our lives, the ones we just buy from on autopilot,
Yeah.
that they possess some sort of flawless, impenetrable growth machine.
Right, like they have it all figured out.
Right. But today, we're taking a deep dive into this massive structural mismatch in modern business. We are looking at why the traditional mechanics of scaling a brand are, completely out of sync with how consumers actually make decisions today.
Yeah, and that structural mismatch, it's currently separating the stagnant companies from the true category leaders. So the goal of our deep dive today is to explore why a very specific, highly deliberate, data-backed strategy is yielding like 1.8 times faster growth.
Which is wild.
It is, for the brands that actually deploy it anyway. And we are going to tear down the mechanics of why the vast majority of companies are still completely ignoring it despite all the financial evidence.
Right. So whether you are actively building a company or maybe trying to drive operational change from inside a corporate team, or honestly, if you're just a consumer trying to figure out why a certain brand feels like an extension of your own identity, while another feels entirely hollow.
Yeah, the bait and switch feeling.
Exactly. This deep dive is for you. We are looking at the literal mechanical blueprint for modern loyalty.
And, to really understand that blueprint, we first have to sort of isolate the error in the traditional marketing playbook.
The glitch.
Right, the glitch. Because decades of corporate strategy have been built on a concept we can basically call the melting pot approach.
Which is really just the default state of business, right? Like, when I look at the historical data on this, it reminds me of a poorly coded algorithm.
Oh, how so?
Like, imagine an e-commerce platform that is literally programmed to recommend the exact same, completely average, beige, size 9 shoe to every single person on Earth.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you live in the Arctic, or if you're a marathon runner, or if you wear a size 12, the system just points a massive megaphone at the global population and blasts this one homogenized message.
Just banking on the law of large numbers.
Exactly. Banking on the law of large numbers to hit a few people who just happen to have average size 9 feet.
That's a great analogy. And the crucial context here is that this melting pot approach, it wasn't really born out of intentional exclusion.
Right. It's not like brands were trying to be malicious.
No, not at all. It's actually a byproduct of legacy infrastructure. I mean, if you look at the enterprise resource planning systems, the creative briefs, the Nielsen rating measurement frameworks from the last 30 years, they were entirely engineered around broad reach and household demographics.
Right. Just hitting as many TVs as possible.
Exactly. Identity specificity, like recognizing someone beyond an age bracket or a zip code, it simply wasn't in the architecture of how a business was built to operate. They were mathematically incentivized to just cast the widest net possible.
So it's not just a bad marketing habit then. It's a literal operational glitch.
Yes. And what's fascinating here is how deeply that glitch is embedded in the supply chain, the media buying, the product development cycles.
It's everywhere.
It is. And the foil to that glitch, the operational pivot that actually fixes it, is moving from that melting pot to what we call the mosaic.
The mosaic, right. So instead of assuming a total addressable market is one giant, blurry, homogeneous crowd, you treat the market as a collection of distinct, vibrant identity communities.
Yes, exactly.
And map the specific communities that actually make up your consumer base.
Right, because the mosaic fundamentally changes the unit of measurement.
Yeah.
When a business stops trying to sell the beige shoe to everyone and starts engineering touch points for specific identity communities directly, the behavioral metrics fundamentally shift. The data shows that engagement, conversion rates, long-term loyalty, they all experience an immediate upward trajectory.
Which, makes intuitive sense, right? If you speak to me directly and you acknowledge my specific needs, yeah, I'm going to buy your product.
Right.
But intuition doesn't exactly unlock corporate budgets.
No, it definitely doesn't. Hard data unlocks budgets. And if we move from the theoretical framework of this glitch to the empirical proof of the mosaic, the financial delta between those two approaches is just staggering.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because there is an AI tool operating right now called the SeeMe Index.
Yeah, the SeeMe Index.
Right, and it's essentially an engine designed to crawl through massive amounts of consumer identity data, analyzing visual and textual touch points at scale to find untapped growth.
It's incredible tech.
It really is.
Yeah.
And they recently published the 2026 Inclusivity Index for beauty. They analyzed the market and found that beauty brands utilizing a highly inclusive, mosaic-driven marketing strategy, they're growing 1.8 times faster than their less inclusive competitors.
Wow.
Yeah. Almost double the growth rate, just by upgrading the architecture of who they speak to.
I mean, a 1.8 times growth multiplier is the kind of compounding advantage that completely reshapes a market cap over a 5-year period.
Well, wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, lay it on me.
Whenever I see a massive multiplier tied to one specific sector, my instinct is to look for the anomaly. Like, beauty is inherently tied to personal identity, right? Skin tone, deeply personal expression.
Sure.
So if you're selling foundation or concealer, of course identity matters. But what if you're selling B2B enterprise software or auto parts or banking services?
Right.
Is this 1.8x growth factor just a beauty industry phenomenon? Or is it an actual universal law of business physics?
That is a completely fair question. And honestly, if the data was isolated to cosmetics, you could absolutely write it off as a sector-specific variable.
Yeah.
But the macro analysis proves otherwise. The United Nations actually conducted a massive longitudinal study to test this exact mechanism across the broader economy.
Wait, the UN?
Yes, the UN. And they didn't just look at a handful of companies, they tracked 392 different brands.
Wow.
Spanning 58 countries over a continuous 5-year period.
Okay, so controlling for a 5-year period across that many borders means they're completely isolating the mosaic strategy from like macroeconomic shifts or inflation or seasonal trends.
Exactly. They isolated the variable of inclusive representation to see exactly what it does to the bottom line. And the UN data revealed a cascading series of compounding gains that apply across industries.
Okay, what were the numbers?
So they documented a 3% baseline increase in short-term sales.
A quick top-line revenue bump. Not bad.
Not bad at all. But the short-term bump is really just the tip of the spear. The longitudinal data showed a 16% increase in long-term sales.
16%?
Yeah, and crucially, a 15% increase in customer loyalty.
Okay, a 15% jump in loyalty literally changes the entire unit economics of a business.
It completely rewrites them.
Right, because it drives down your customer acquisition cost and spikes your lifetime value. I mean, that is the holy grail.
Absolutely.
But, you know, seeing those numbers on a spreadsheet and actually capturing them in the wild are two entirely different things.
Oh, for sure.
Take an anecdote from the field. There's this consultant working with a major brand, and they run the analytics and realize that literally half of their ideal customer base is multicultural.
Right.
Like identifying as Black, Hispanic, Asian, or another non-white heritage.
That's 50% of their total addressable market just sitting inside a mosaic they hadn't been actively targeting.
Exactly. So they have the realization, right?
Yeah.
They see the UN data. They know the 1.8 times growth multiplier exists.
Yeah.
But having that awareness does not magically deposit revenue into their bank account. So mechanically, if a brand suddenly maps their mosaic, why doesn't that awareness instantly translate into market dominance? Like, where is the friction?
Well, the friction basically lives in the execution gap. Because just seeing the mosaic, that's really just the starting line.
Okay.
Asha Shivaji, the CEO of the SeeMe Index, she actually isolated this specific failure point. She notes that brands absolutely earn more when they represent these groups. The capital is definitely there.
Right.
The failure happens in how corporate structures define the actual word representation.
Well, wait, doesn't casting diverse actors in a, like, $30 million Super Bowl commercial solve that?
You would think so, right?
Yeah, like they identify the community, they put them in the hero asset, they've checked the representation box, and they hit the top of the funnel.
And that is exactly how a legacy marketing department thinks. They treat representation as a surface-level top-of-funnel tactic. But humans do not buy based on a single top-of-funnel touch point. Consumers evaluate a brand by stacking touch points to form a unified impression.
Okay, that makes sense.
You watch the Super Bowl ads, sure. But then you click through to the website. You evaluate the product catalog. You interact with the chatbot or the customer service team.
Right.
You look at the retail environment and the actual unboxing experience.
Oh, I see the mechanics of the failure now.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, imagine a restaurant group deciding to revamp their image.
Okay, I'm tracking.
They hire this incredible design firm to build this beautiful, welcoming storefront. The signage is inviting, the lighting is warm, the messaging on the street essentially says, we built this space specifically for you.
Right, it's very alluring.
Yeah, so your brain processes that signal, you build an expectation, and you walk inside.
Because you trust the top of funnel promise.
Exactly. But the second you sit down, the menu is completely generic and doesn't cater to your dietary needs at all. The waitstaff is using a completely different clinical tone. The loyalty program later sends you coupons for food you would never even eat.
Yeah.
It's just a completely different operational reality than the one they advertised on the street.
And what you think happens in the consumer's brain in that exact moment?
Complete cognitive dissonance. The trust doesn't just return to neutral, it drops way below baseline.
Exactly.
Because you realize the welcoming storefront wasn't an actual reflection of the restaurant's identity. It was just a trap to get you through the door.
And trust instantly erodes. And the moment that trust erodes, the 15% loyalty bump and the 1.8 times growth multiplier, they completely evaporate.
Poof on.
Gone. You cannot algorithmically fake the mosaic. Shivaji is incredibly direct about the mechanical requirement here.
Yeah.
You must choose who you want to show up for, and then you have to systematically ensure you show up for them across every single brand touchpoint, consistently over time.
Consistently over time. Right, so you don't just drop a hyper-targeted ad during a specific cultural heritage month. Harvest the short-term sales bump and then default back to the generic megaphone for the other 11 months of the year.
Exactly. You have to engineer it into the structural reality of the company.
Right.
The mosaic has to be intact when the consumer is navigating a friction point with the support line, or when they're trying to return an item to a physical store, and when the product is actually sitting on their bathroom counter or in their software stack.
Yeah, so what does this all mean for the people actually pulling the levers? I mean, we know the melting pot glitch leaves money on the table.
Yeah.
We know the UN data proves the financial upside of the mosaic is compounding.
Yeah.
And we know exactly where the execution gap lies. It's in the failure to integrate those touch points.
Right.
But if the roadmap is this transparent, why are legacy brands still stalling?
Well,
Is it because what we were really talking about isn't a marketing pivot at all? It's like a massive brand-wide operational teardown.
that's exactly it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason category leaders are rare is because sustained cross-functional alignment is an absolute operational nightmare for a legacy business.
Oh, I bet.
Dismantling a 30-year-old siloed structure is painful. To execute the mosaic correctly, the product development team has to share a continuous feedback loop with marketing.
Which rarely happens.
Right. And then marketing has to build their messaging based on the realities of the customer service department. Customer service has to dictate terms to the retail operations team.
And in most Fortune 500 companies, those departments barely speak the same language.
No, not at all.
They have different key performance indicators, different software stacks, and completely different incentive structures.
Exactly. Jason Klein, who's the COO of the SeeMe Index, he actually captures this tension perfectly.
What does he say?
He points out the cold operational reality sitting on the desks of executives right now. He basically says, it is a lot easier to stay doing the exact same thing you've been doing for the last 30 years, but it's going to be a lot less likely that you're going to be able to grow your business that way.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's the ultimate standoff between operational comfort and actual growth.
Exactly.
Because the familiar path, the melting pot, the siloed departments, the generic megaphone, it feels incredibly safe.
It does.
It's what the board of directors historically understands. And it's exactly what the legacy tracking software was built to measure in the first place.
Right. It feels safe in the immediate term, but the data proves that the safe path is basically a mathematical guarantee of stagnation.
Yeah.
And it is so critical to separate this conversation from the usual corporate buzzwords. Building a mosaic strategy is not about ESG reporting. It is not about PR optics.
It's not just a bullet point on a corporate social responsibility PDF.
No, not at all. It is a hard-nosed, capital-efficient, strategic imperative. The brands that are currently absorbing market share, the ones locking in that 16% increase in long-term sales, they have made a ruthless, deliberate decision about which identity communities actually drive their revenue.
Right.
And then they have undertaken the brutal internal work of forcing their supply chain, their product teams, and their frontline staff to align around that decision.
which honestly exposes the massive, wide-open advantage currently sitting in the market.
Huge advantage.
Because that operational teardown is so difficult,
Yeah.
and because corporate silos are so stubborn, the vast majority of brands have not made the leap yet.
No, they haven't.
So the competitive white space is massive. The 1.8 times growth multiplier is just sitting there waiting for the operators willing to commit to the friction of fixing their internal glitch.
Exactly. The communities making up the mosaic, they are fully capitalized, they have the purchasing power, and they are actively, daily, searching for the brands that actually understand their specific architecture.
Yeah.
And when they find a brand whose touch points actually align, they reward that operational rigor with loyalty that compounds. The debate over whether this methodology works is officially over.
The numbers don't lie.
No, the longitudinal data has entirely settled the argument.
It is a fundamental rewiring of how business gets done. Honestly, we've covered a massive amount of ground on this deep dive.
We really have.
We started by diagnosing the architectural glitch of the melting pot. The legacy systems designed to blast a single average message to a global crowd.
The beige shoe.
Right, the beige shoe. And we analyzed the hard empirical proof from the SeeMe AI models to the United Nations 5-year longitudinal study, proving that the mosaic approach drives compounding, universal growth. And finally, we unpacked the fatal execution gap, identifying that true representation isn't just a top-of-funnel casting choice, but a structural alignment of every single touchpoint a consumer experiences.
It requires a total structural transformation. But, there is actually a secondary dynamic emerging here. One that builds on this data and looks at the immediate horizon of how commerce is evolving.
Okay.
We've established that inconsistent touchpoints, like the beautiful storefront hiding the generic menu, erode human trust.
Right.
But we are rapidly entering an era where AI becomes the ultimate intermediary.
Wait, like personal AI agents acting as the buffer between the consumer and the economy.
Exactly. As we start relying on highly personalized, hyper-specific AI agents to curate our shopping, to summarize our brand interactions, and to just filter out all the noise, what happens when your finely tuned, identity-specific AI agent hits a brand's generic legacy backend?
Oh, wow.
If the brand hasn't structured its metadata and its operational touchpoints to support the mosaic, the AI simply won't process it.
It'll just skip right over them.
Right. Will the glitch go from being a missed opportunity for human trust to a fatal, impenetrable barrier where AI algorithms simply refuse to present your brand to the consumer in the first place?
That is wild, because if the AI evaluates the supply chain and the customer service architecture and realizes it doesn't align with your identity, it won't even show you the welcoming storefront.
Exactly.
That is a chilling, entirely new layer of existential risk for legacy brands. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. As you navigate your week, take a closer look at the interfaces, the products, and the retail environments of the brands you naturally gravitate toward. Look past the advertising and see if you can spot the structural mechanics of the mosaic operating beneath the surface. Until next time.